Welcome everyone, Dr. Thor here. Get ready for Gnosis. Well, let's call this coffee time morning radionic talk for today. Instead of dinner with Dr. Thor, we're going to call this breakfast with Dr. Thor. And we've got another interesting unit here. Here's a 3-dial unit I've had for years. And we'll be going over this and looking at it in detail in a different video. But for the time being, let's talk about the dead-end street that Radionics has been on for really 30, 40 years now, and how it continues to go from worse to worser, from worse to terrible. So we have to understand that we do at this particular time, after many, many years of research and other things, that we have a much better understanding of what radionics is in terms of the nature of the energy. So if we don't know what the energy is and don't understand how it works, we're not going to be able to use amplifying tools with it. Now, the whole history of radionics is a long one. Of course, my course covers a lot of this, talks about the different discoveries, etc. And we just don't know, because of suppression of anything that works, of how well it works. We don't really know. And when we get into common explanations, going back to Abrams, who had his version of radionics, and of course he didn't call it that, the electric reaction of Abrams, we just don't know. The machines they show initially are quite different than the ones that were sent to practitioners. They apparently had virtually nothing in them, working on a very psychic level, and there was really nothing to them. And we just don't know the honesty of all of that in terms of how well it worked, practitioners, etc. Abrams, who was quite a genius himself, a Jewish San Francisco merchant, coming from a wealthy family, who trained as a doctor in the United States and in Europe, came up with these interesting things, and I'm not really sure why, but this was before patent medicine. So everybody was looking for, what can we do beyond giving something whiskey or opium or other things. So the whole idea is this is what started. So there was a great emphasis to find cures for things like that. So that was the reason why so many things came out then. Because of his untimely death, and he never subjected himself to any kind of tests. He had somebody in his organization that represented him, kinda, and apparently, and we just don't know, the article written about this testing of him by Scientific Magazine failed horribly. And then they went back saying that, well, this wasn't really a qualified person, etc. This is what we run into. Ruth Drown had similar problems when she was tested, but there's an awful lot of anecdotal evidence of people that say they were cured by her. And this is where the common term radionics apparently seems to be used. But radionics is an old term that goes back to radios, so it's not an unusual term, and it's pretty much a bad term. Radionics should be called, as there are two better names that nobody uses. Psionics, which is so good, psychic and electronics, which is really a good way of terming it, but this has fallen into disuse because it's used in fiction, science fiction books, and not taken on by the scientific community. The other one is psychotronics, which is another great term, because you're dealing, again, mind, consciousness involved with tronics, or what we could say machinery. Radionics assumes that there's some radio signal coming from it, and of course that was the confusion of it. But we have to understand that all of this is wrong, and none of these people really made. Ruth Drown had many different units, but her majorly marketed unit was not electric. And the apparatuses that Abrams made, while some of them plugged in, they really didn't have any electricity doing anything again. And as usual, the electricity doesn't do anything with any of this stuff. So we have to keep all that in mind. So what is it? But what is the energy? Now, we must understand there's a difference between crude, primitive electromagnetic energies and what we are dealing with is high consciousness, or we could almost label this almost cosmic type energies, energies that are not electromagnetic in nature, things like Reiki, acupuncture, acupressure, ultimately are stimulating what are considered non-electromagnetic. Chi and all these things are not really electromagnetic in any way. They keep trying to copy this, particularly in the chi industry. And the whole idea is it isn't. When you make something into a frequency device, this is a totally different reality. It's not radionics, plain and simple. It is now an electromagnetic frequency machine, which is not what radionics produces. Radionics does not produce traditional frequencies. They're primitive. They're good for your toaster, and maybe advanced frequency machines have some value, but again, all this stuff is in great question of how it works. The gossip is that Rife found all these frequencies that would cure everything, and the minute he announced it, he was pounced upon and persecuted. But it's many people have picked up from him, and I don't know what's working or not. Zappers and other things. The famous electromagnetic frequency user was Hulda Clark, who wrote the 2 giant books on the cure for all cancers, working on frequencies and other things, regular Hertzian frequencies. She called them the zappers. Bob Beck did this as well, who produced his own blood purification pulse machine, which itself is out there. But we're using electromagnetic frequencies here. And of course, Hulda Clark died of 72 or so of cancer. And Bob Beck, of course, lived an okay lifespan, but not really a long one. Apparently had several serious health problems, which he was able to stay fairly well using his tech, but did not live long. I think he died, again, these are people that die in their 70s or very early 80s. Now, there is something to this, but this is really a primitive type of energy that certainly deserves actual research. So we need to look into what do frequencies do that you kind of pump into your body. And it makes sense that if you put a frequency in there, that you're going to get some sort of types of results of one way or another. How potent it is, what it is, as long as we do not have medical freedom and we don't encourage investment and research into there, because nobody wants to put money into something that you can't market because it's, quote, illegal, or you're going to have to spend billions of dollars in research to get it produced, and then you have to go against drug companies. Well, it's just not going to work. The system is rigged, it's broken, and there's nothing new to it. So until we have an international law that states medical freedom, we will never get away from this. So this is the problem living in the hell that we're at, and things will never change, even if it has to do with the life and death of something. So we do have to keep that in mind with the bigger processes that are going on here. But we have to define this energy once and for all. We need to get away from all of this ridiculous digitalization, cell phone crap. So, it's the same old story as was done in the Matrix Simulac, whatever that book was. I don't recall the exact title, but you take something that is profound and sacred, so to speak, something that you ultimately you believe has very high quality to it and very, as I said, sacred almost, which this is the study of higher consciousness and radionics is the only path you ever need. It really is the actual path of high consciousness, spirituality. You don't need anything else because this system teaches you. Now, if you want to believe in other things because that's where you're brainwashed from, mommy, daddy did it, you do it. You got pressure in your town. You're a hillbilly. So the whole idea is that all of these things that go with this reality is up to you. But if you want to develop yourself as a higher person, so you're able to find out what's best for you or even judge systems that are out there right now, you need to develop your consciousness, which is not really based in a belief system per se. The only belief system you have as a higher consciousness person is to find answers. And that's what everybody should be. Now, if you think those answers come from other ways, well, you have to get to a point where you can judge that. And when you really get to that point, you find out how silly all the systems out there. And let's not go after one particular area. They're all pretty goofy, and the average person is as dumb as a pile of poo. So the whole idea is that we need to understand that in the bigger picture. So, so what is the nature of these kind of energies? Now, going back to a person who seems to still be carrying a lot of weight in the industry, and one of probably the last of the pioneers that was continued his stuff in up until recent years, was Hieronymus. Now, Hieronymus machines and everything else are overly glorified and overly given credit to. There's certainly nothing special about Hieronymus machines. They have 2 or 4, up to 4 generally, large tunable capacitors, open air tunable capacitors. And they're huge, which is very typical about these capacitors that were used particularly in older electronics. And here's another term we have to understand. All this old stuff, while great markers, the great guidelines go by, but it's all pretty much of the past. You know, we have lots of new stuff now that none of these people, and even up to modern days, are using whatsoever. Well, that's all got to change. So we have to use the great technology we have, a lot of the now very high quality electronics that we can get from China for very low prices, unbelievably inexpensive, so much of this, and pretty good quality you're getting there from China in a lot of areas. Now, there's a lot of junk from China, but the electronics that are basically being built over there, at least the ones that I use, are all extremely high quality and very fairly priced. So we have to keep that all in mind. We also have the use of great photonic energy, otherwise known as lasers, which are totally and completely unused by a really stupid class of radionic practitioners, which continue to go on and is actually built and further pushed by these horrible radionic associations and organizations and the people they support and the books that get out there. These people have no idea what they're doing. All the technologies that are out there right now go back at least 40, 50, even 60 years. They're goofball stuff. They don't really work very well. And some of them are pushing crappy little boxes like the SE5, which have horrible failure rates, have proven nothing, and cost you $5,000 or $6,000 if you can find the price out from that guy who's a horrible technology. And we have to finally get out there and doing this. But the associations that are connected with this area of study have been pushing the SE5 for 40 years. And of course, there's even lots of deaths linked to the SE5. People who died of cancer, shows you how great that is. And for that matter, the same thing with the Hieronymus machine. So we don't know what Hieronymus did or not did. Again, it's very hard to get information and what is out there, and what is, information that's 20, 30 years old is really not very valid anymore. They're just guide markers. Yeah, interesting. That's what they said. Is that the answer from what we knew back then and from the technologies and very primitive electronics we have? We went from a lot of very primitive electronics into things that are fairly complex now, but it's a mixture of good and bad there, like everything. People have given up things that work well with this kind of unique energy. And again, we're not using electromagnetic spectrum. Now, it's interesting because Hieronymus, with his alloptic energy, stated that it was not electromagnetic. So this, again, is not anything overly new. But if we keep trying to use digitalization, digital photographs, digital phones to start using this technology, what we've done, again, I kind of jumped off of that, is we've taken something very sacred and we brought it down to a statue that you put on your dash of your car, a little plastic statue from what was a basic, very sacred image. And that's what we're doing right now. We've taken what is a fantastic, interesting technology, and we brought it down to the lowest common denominator. And the people that are coming out right now in the radionic industry are bogus government agents that are destroying this industry, trying to digitalize everything because they come from the computer industry. And to think that everything can be computerized is the height of ignorant stupidity. Just shows you the kind of snail-bellied height of thinking that you really are at. Now, there's a place for computers. There's a place for digitalization. It's fantastic when you want to make little films like this. When you want to print stuff cheap like this. Here's our great Radionic cup. Nice giant cup. Put your thought form into it and then drink it. Fantastic little tools like this based on your empowerment. Of course, you're nothing. And of course, you've been told that by everybody. You got to go somewhere else, and you got to have an intermediate between you and whatever your religious system is. Everything else that we give our power away to all the boobs that never come up with any answers. But your pockets are empty, and their pockets are full. So the whole idea is that we have to understand that. So when we turn this over to this, and of course, this whole attitude is trying to computerize things, which came from the SE5, which is really just a box of junk. And the point is that a very high-priced box of junk, which is just another. And we have this entire unit was taken apart, looked at it. We have this for Patreon and all access members if you want to really see what's inside an SE5, which is basically nothing but some really bad electronics and 3 little goofball scalar antennas that aren't even hooked up to the main circuit. So it's really just a very poorly engineered hot mess of garbage. So it doesn't really make any sense. So when we get into all that, the entire radionic industry is all controlled by criminals. It's been pushed out there. The people involved in it. Now it's went from criminals into controlled by government agents, people who are involved with criminal law enforcement. It goes on with all these things that go on. It's really sick, but this is nothing new. The bottom line is everything out there is connected with that. So nothing is out there is pure and uncorrupted. People are easily gotten to, and people are cowards, and they have no problem bending over for little benefits or a couple of bucks. So it's just the way it goes. But I mean, we've went down the wrong track here. Nobody is interested in anything that really has advanced technology to it. So when you have terrible organizations like the Radionic Association in the UK, which really has been around and does nothing, it has a course, that's it. But you have to go there and spend 3 years and basically producing a journal, and it's just not doing anything. The U.S. Psychotronic Association has always been a giant joke and has done absolutely nothing, and now is pushing, as they come back, pushing people that have no idea what they're doing whatsoever, and of course aren't seeking anybody else out. Now, you got to remember that I've been in this industry and are the radionic expert on this planet for over 30 years now. I was the first person to have the first and only person on this planet to have a radionic retail store where I had equipment set up and everything that went with that for 3 years. And of course, you think that organizations like that would beat a path to your door. I had ads running. I was a member of the Psychotronic Association there, yet they never, ever bothered to contact me because they are corrupt people. And their organization is corrupt, and they have been, as has been toxified by this entire place, working with people like Carl Hans Wells, the notorious evil Satanist, who produced very toxic machines that these people are more than happy to embrace. As this continues to this day, as people are nothing but cowardice scum that refuse to do anything proper, or when you notify them of this fact, to have people understand what's going on, they tell you stupidly, I only look for the good things in people. It's unbelievable. And of course, most of these people on top of it, of course, are your typical cowardice Christians who like to look at a dead guy on a stick. So the whole idea, this is the kind of ridiculousness that you run into in this entire field. So with that, we have to understand the nature of what you're dealing with. So if you don't understand the energy, then you're not going to be able to produce technologies to use these energies to their highest and best value. Now, I know what all this is, and we are made a radical turn now, 380 degrees around, that we're changing everything we're doing into this understanding of what this really energy is. And, we all get caught up in old belief systems where somehow, well, I mean, this guy 120 years ago used copper wires, so we're going to use copper wires. Well, does it make sense to use copper wires with something that's not electromagnetic in nature, meaning it's not electricity? Electricity is great. I love it. Every time I want to toast my bread or turn on my blender, cooking my food, well, I love that electricity. It's kind of fun. But I'm not going to use it for high purposes. And you got to remember that electricity doesn't do anything. Electricity creates something. So if you have a toaster, the electricity activates a coil inside to make it the heat the toasted bread. So the whole idea, it's not the electricity itself, it's what the electricity is doing. If you have air conditioning, electricity doesn't make air conditioning. It doesn't create cold air. Well, that creates a compressor. The compressor then moves around a particular fluid to make it simple. We don't want to go into an air conditioning course. And of course, that makes it cold, and then a fan blows on that and you get cold air. So it's not electricity. Electricity isn't turned into cold air. It goes through a whole bunch of processes. So we must understand that. So your radionic devices, no matter who makes them, do not have anything in them. There's nothing in a radionic machine. There's just dials that are psychic tuners. Now, this creates, and I've talked about other things, and I'm not going to particularly go over that right now. I want to make this relatively short explanation here. The bottom line is that we need to understand that these kind of energies, which I'm going to move away from that radionics term in general. This is subtle energy physics energies. So we're going to have to use these kind of terminologies. So these are subtle energy physics machines, also known as or similar to radionic machines, but because radionic machines don't run on that again. There are no electric radionic machines that the electricity does anything. As is so famous with even quality builders like Copen Labs and Bruce Copen in general. The first machine I got of his, I said, well, what's making his stuff work? Well, it had electricity going to it. At that time, I didn't have much money. I bought a one dial. And like all Copen stuff, it's made pretty well. But the electricity did have electricity, and you connected it to your particular plug for your country, and you plugged it in. Ooh, looky here, Doctor, the light comes on. Ooh, something's happening. Well, dumb guy, that's right. The electricity did make something happen. It made the light go on. So the actual board that was connected to the knob was a surplus board that was purchased by Bruce Copen in Mass for pennies. So maybe that's why he was able to meet you at the airport, so the gossip goes, in a Rolls Royce. So I find that hard to believe, but hey, we can put that in the radionic history books. Of course, Copen died young, and that's the name of that tune. Take that to the bank and cash it. So the whole idea is that we have all that stuff that we have to look at. So it's a really bad term, but that's what the public understands. But so you have that particular problem, but it's really not the basic understanding. There's nothing radio going on here. And basically, there's nothing overly electronics going on. Now, what we're trying to do is amplify this unique type of energy. And how do we do it? So we're working on all that stuff, and of course, well, I'm not working. I'm working on. I'm developing it. I know exactly what works, and all this stuff is on the edge of dropping off and getting out there as I clean up my entire website, change everything over to our new tech. We have a great new manifesting machine, which we are now going into our second model of, which will be different than the first model. And this will be an exciting tool that we can all benefit from. We're getting fantastic reports back from our Scion generator. And of course, all of the way this energy works is laid out in my mini courses and everything else. But this takes a long time, unfortunately, to get uh, from the lab into your personal hands. But it's all there. It's all happening, and we're so busy in general that it's difficult to break some time. But all this is going down here. But I know exactly what this energy is. Now, these organizations that refuse to do anything, and of course continue to perpetuate the same junk technology and continue to push those types of technology or have ruined the industry. And of course, we can expect that. Now they're embracing government agents that work for the Department of Defense and for FBI, CIA type people in so-called computer security, which is nothing more than electronic cops. So the whole idea is we've further destroyed the internet, and this guy thinks that everybody, and we're going to talk about this particular person as well in another actual video here to clarify all this. But there's lots of great tools out there, and don't let your personal misunderstanding of this energy direct you away from things that are a non-traditional nature or symbolic in nature, empowered. But you got to remember, this isn't just symbolic, what I produce. There's a layer of energetic information in there, and our whole new energetic system using special scalar energy disks, little mini machines, as I call them, it basically brings all of this technology into a fantastic new energetic system that is unparalleled. So we have to fully understand that and understand what's going on with it in the bigger picture. So all of this is coming to fruition, especially when things start to move here by the middle to the end of this year, when I can set up my own laboratory to do things. You also have people interested in investing and other things which could move us, but things take time, but could move us into big lab facilities in pretty quick ways in places where it can be operated better. So all of these things will be able to operate a little better, including being located in the UK, where Radionics is a semi-legal practitioner, therefore working with these type of energy. So all that is a huge step. It all takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of coordination. And even if I had millions of dollars to hire people, nobody knows anything. Who are you going to hire? So there's no good people out there to work with in general. They're all pretty messed up stooges, and all of this is a big problem with what's going on. So we have to keep this under complete and total understanding of what these energies are and how they work. And the industry is all based on egotistical maniacs, but you got to remember, all institutions are infiltrated by troublemakers, so that nobody gets along. And of course, the takeover of the radionic industry by Satanists is well known. This has been going on for over 30 years by the well-known Karl Hans Wells, who's a big-time Satanist and has been for many years, pushing his evilness out there, producing very toxic machines that have hurt a lot of people. So the whole idea is there's a long list of people that I have that have used Orgone and have gotten sick from it, and many of them have died. So the whole idea, including people like Don Croft, who just worked with Orgone and was so mentally screwed up by it that he died in a goofball accident because his brain was toxic, full of toxic orgonite and all the toxic metals and aluminums he was handling. So all these things is these side problems that we run into out there that we need to look at. So we have to understand this, and it has nothing to do with business or competition. It's an industry. But unfortunately, there is no universal group gets together. It's everybody harassing other ones for profit. And of course, they are directed by and controlled by big money, governmental and criminal people. Now, people, you have to understand, know what you're working with, just like with the energy. Why is this not better research? Why aren't things happening? Well, that's why. And look at the stooges that have come out recently in this particular field. They have absolutely no credibility whatsoever. So if you are a person who works with cement, and then you say, well, gee, I've got this new process for plastic, Well, why should I care? Your history is in cement. Why would you know anything about plastic? And this is pretty much what the kind of differences that we have here. So let's understand that again, alloptic energy. So, and I always like to talk about other people that come from and their conclusions as well. Most of what I do is not, I'm not sure what 100% original means. Basically, you want to build on what is considered very open mindedly, though. You want to build on what is considered to be a viable or correct understanding of the physics involved and the technology. So you don't want to start from the ground. So let's get back to that old cement, which seems to be stuck in my mind. We know how to make cement. And what you do is, well, I'm going to make a different cement. I'm going to make cement out of tree bark. Whoa, okay. Well, that kind of, it's not really cement, is it? What is cement? Limestone, you bake it, whatever. It's a kind of an interesting process to make cement. But the whole idea is that, well, that's not cement. And if you can make something better than cement and cheaper, well, let's see it. But that's starting from the ground up. What you want to do is, how do you make better cement? Cement that is stronger, cement that doesn't crack. And it's quite interesting is that the ancients, of course, figured that out, particularly the Romans, who they just found some. The key to cement to keep it strong is that it never really cures. And there are cement in the different oceans out there that the Romans put there that are still curing thousands of years later. They knew how to make it, but we don't know how to make it. So, but the whole idea is that we have to understand by using a known technology. And as we develop it so that we try and make it better, well, that may take you down other roads. You may figure things out. And that, of course, is what we're doing here. So I develop things with proven technologies that I synergistically put together into a better technology, or all the information put together makes one bigger, stronger, better, or correct, or gnosis information. It's wisdom, it's truth, as you put that all together. And as you're doing your research, then you find out how all this stuff works. So that's what any good researcher does. So if you are closed-minded in any way, if you slavishly follow the system like physicists of today do, because they don't really want to deal with much outside of it, even though some do. I mean, there are some good out there, a little more open-minded, but you're not going to be appreciated in the industry if you're open-minded. We know it. We're the big chiefs. We get the big salaries, and we don't care what anybody else says. That's a very poor way of looking at things, and they're fearful of their own personal income. So that's really what it comes down to. And of course, that means if they don't follow on with their gang, the physicist gang from MIT and Caltech, they're the gangs. Watch them pocket protector, nerdy people that can't comb their hair gangs that tell you how the world works. And they're very arrogant about it because they went to school and the gang supports them. Well, the problem with that is you're closing lots of doors when you really don't have answers, because we don't really have answers to anything. Any of our major problems in life, whether that's inexpensive, clean energy, where is it? Doesn't exist. How about cures? Any kind of cures, treatments? What about dandruff?
Ooh, yeah, Dr. Thor, that's a hard disease to figure out, Yeah, it's pandemic, and we can't figure that out as the medical industry.
Well, that's right, dumb guy. The bottom line is that these are all things that we have to be very cognizant of. We have to be aware of the fact that, well, they have no answers to anything. The medical industry can't cure dandruff. They can't cure acne. You name it. There's pretty much things they can't cure. People walk around with horrible yet almost simplistic problems, and they're never taken care of by their local doctors, who either don't want to bother, or because there's not enough money in it, or just don't know what to do in situations. It's quite interesting as we see this at this particular time in history. TV shows that have dermatologists and people have horrible growths on their skin that are never taken off by terrible doctors. So the whole idea, it's not complicated, and to do, they just won't do it, or people can't even afford it. So we don't have answers to anything. So once these guys can cure that horrible, horrible bacteria, that virus, or which is called dandruff, then we can figure out, Mr. Thor, what we can do later. The point is, we can do nothing. So the bottom line is that this is where we're at. at this time. So if you're going to be arrogant, you better have solutions to what's going on, and it better not cost. Well, you just don't understand that, Doctor Thor. I have a cure for dandruff. It's $6 million a treatment. So, but it's a cure. So the whole idea is this is the other kind of nonsense. If you can't make something that is at a that can handle a particular situation at a reasonable price that everyone can afford, basically, then it has no value. So we hear about all this stuff, but there's an awful lot of talky into big money industries that don't do nothing, like supplements, who promise you the world and deliver you nothing but, again, an empty pocket. They should call them doctor supplements, so we can have the same kind of empty pockets you get from your doctor as you get from these supplements. So, $60 billion industry, because people are trying to stay well and they're being fed a pile of poo. So we do need to understand all that as we move ahead in the entire area here. What is this all about? And as we continue to be taken down the wrong path by organizations, by people writing crappy books, and of course by the public who continues to support these people, thinking that somehow they have a secret or something that works when they don't. And they perpetrate and put tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars of money into pockets of people that do nothing but lie, cheat, and extort money from them, producing little or no results. And that's, of course, what you get from this. Then they mix technologies. They're mixing oil and water, telling you that, yeah, it really mixes. It doesn't mix, and it doesn't work, and it's all fantasy. So, combined with the placebo effect, with basic direct intention results, all these things are a giant mess and really a toxic and foul-tasting soup. So we must all be aware of that, and let's go on to the next level. And of course, next level subtle energy physics technologies, radionic technologies. The next level of this is only coming from radionic tech, and we're the only people that get it. The rest of these people and the years of their studies and their institutes have done absolutely zero, and they'd never reach out to go to anybody out there and find out what other people are doing. They expect you to end up on their door, where they ignore you and treat you like garbage, to lap at their feet when they're not going to do anything but take the money from the corrupt people that they're working with. And I can pretty much allege that with all of them. All these people are controlled and paid off by numerous people, and particularly the satanic industry that runs radionics right now and encompasses everyone. No one on the planet is untouched by these criminal people that are controlling this industry and will continue to control this industry, because that's the nature of them internationally. So, and anyone who tries to go against that system will find out the problems you run into with the huge criminals that run everything on this planet all over the world. So there is no place that there isn't this kind of impact. So we all have to be very cognizant of the fact of what's going on, and you, as the person out there trying to survive and prosper, need to be directed in the right direction. And as I said, watch for all the coming new things that'll be happening in the next 6 months as we continue to convert over everything we do into this new high-tech way. And of course, we still got our great products there, but every single product that we make is going to be changing now as we bring everything up to next level empowerments, which will be limited in its fact of having anything physical. Now, there will be electric machines that amplify these non-physical energies through a particular and special process that I have designed. But the bottom line is that you don't need so many physical items. Things like our tachyon, neutrino, graviton cells, well, we don't need that cell to put on something. We have an energetic disc that serves as an antenna to draw that energy in. And of course, these things can be updated, modified, and added to your system as well. And that's another thing that's important. We have to constantly be able to add in new technologies when they arise without having to run into the fact of, well, this is too physical. Well, no, just upgrade your unit by getting the proper scalar energy disk to add that into what you have. So it's an exciting new system that allows for every new improvement that comes out there that can be easily added to a system without being stuck with old machinery, old technology, and what are generally high costs. Once you get a good standard system, once you get that, then you are able to integrate into that any kind of improvement, any kind of new tech, any kind of old tech that you want by just connecting that to your non physical system. You got to remember, this is non physical energies in any way whatsoever. It is energetic in nature as described in subtle energy physics. And we all know how this works now. Now it's a time to apply it. Now it's a time to put it together and kick ass make it work. And of course, that's what is going on right now. And it's not research, it's development. There's a big difference between that. Research means,
where am I? It's like being in a dark room with the light off. How do you find the door?
well, that's not where we're at.